Welcome back again to the Chasing Tone podcast. I'm Brian, here with Max and Anthony, once again from TexasBluesAlley.com. And today we've got some cool things to talk about. We talk about these awesome Zexcoil pickups,
Zexy.
Why they are very Zexy. We'd call on that hashtag Zexy.
Hashtag Zexy.
And we also talk about buffers, and low-pass filtering of cables and all that cool stuff, and why you absolutely need a buffer. Get buff. Just like Max. So, with that, let's go into the first question.
The original Snarf writes in, Anthony started playing those Zexcoil pups a couple of years ago. They sound totally hash brown right to my ear. Is he still as excited about the tone he gets from them now as he was then, or has the honeymoon ended?
Yeah, so most of you probably maybe have never heard of Zexcoil before. They've been, you can always recognize them by the slanty pole pieces here. The short answer is I still love them. I have not wanted in terms of pickups, in terms of wanting something better ever since I started using them in 2013. But to understand why I love them, you should probably understand how I found my way to them. I do lessons for a living. I don't play out at clubs and stuff like that because we've all dealt with hum
And
on stage.
Is
TexasBluesAlley.com. And when you're playing at a club and you're dealing with bad electric and you've got all kinds of hum issues, you can do the turning to the right angle trick. You can stay on positions 2 and 4 and that sort of thing. But in my lessons, I can't be changing angle. My guitar has to stay fixed, and I don't always want to use positions 2 and 4, and sometimes I forget to put it there. Right. So anyway, I had huge problems with hum when I was shooting my lessons, and I had just gotten finished shooting a series of lessons on the style of the song Life Without You by Stevie Ray Vaughan. A lot of gain bordering on like fuzz tones. And the hum was just, it was killing me. Like I was as done as somebody could be done with hum. And I just said, when that series was done, I got to do something. I got to find some hum canceling pickups or something. I was ready, I'll take a step backwards in terms of my tone if I have to, if I don't have to deal with the hum. The very next weekend, I discovered Zexcoil pickups at the Philadelphia Guitar Show. It's like vintage guitar show with these like 40, 50-year-old instruments, and then these weird-looking pickups in the one booth. And because I can't afford any of the vintage stuff, I just stopped in. I was like, well, maybe. But anyway, I talked to him, and I didn't say much about what I do or anything like that, but he gave me his scientific pitch about these, and I tried a set a few weeks later. I was completely sold. I begged them. I was like, please let me be one of your artists. I said, I can't promise I'll help you sell any pickups, but I'll put them in front of as many people as I can.
Right.
And we've had a great relationship ever since. So my foot in the door with these pickups had entirely to do with the fact that they were hum canceling. But what I've learned since is that the science behind them, to someone, I come from an electrical engineering background, so I understand enough of the science that I'm blown away by it, but I don't understand it to the point where I could explain it the way that he can.
Right.
But the short layman's term version of it is that the reason they're hum canceling is because there's a single coil per string. So 6 coils in here instead of 1. And when you take 6 coils and you reverse the phase of every other one, it just works out that when you connect them all in a row, the hum is canceled out. And the reason that's a big deal is that usually when you have something that's hum canceling, you have to have something that cancels out the hum. In this design, the thing that's canceling out the hum is also contributing to your tone. So what he says that I kind of understand is that everything in the pickup is working for you, nothing's working against.
Right.
So even though it's subtracting out the hum, it's still picking up sound. It's not there as like a dummy coil or something like that.
Right.
So that's the design of the pickup. That's why they look that way. But the real secret behind them is what's actually in the pole pieces. Like if you look at the metal here,
right.
The guy who makes these has a PhD in like chemical engineering or something like that. And when he started working with pickups, he started studying the actual material of the pole piece more so than the windings. Because in this configuration, he couldn't use Alnico. It didn't have the right properties. There was too many dead spots. So it forced him to look at different materials. And what he discovered is that the material of the pole piece affects your tone way more than the characteristics of the winding, what wire you use, whether it's scatter wire, whatever. Right. And so he built like this physical properties model of materials where, certain pickups are on one edge of the curve and certain pickups on the other, and by plugging in the material parameters of whatever alloy he uses in here, he can pinpoint specific tones. So these pickups that are in here, they call the convertibles, he was able to tweak the humbucker side and the Strat side so that you get a pickup that doesn't change. It changes character, but it doesn't change volume a lot, which is really hard to do if you're not using the types of materials that he does.
Right.
So anyway, if what you want is something that's like super vintage sounding and looks like a vintage pickup, these are not the right thing. But for me, because I cannot have hum in what I'm doing, these are the perfect solution for me, and I still love them. And to this day, when I plug in one of my guitars that have them, I'm still amazed at how good they sound. So that's probably a little bit of a sales pitch for them, but I'm,
buy them now.
Coming from an engineering background,
right.
I love these pickups and I love the science behind them, and that's why I still use them to this day. And you can find out more if you like the science behind it. You can go to Zexcoil, or actually it's lawingmusicalproducts.com now.
Or you can just Google Zexcoil.
Just Google Zexcoil, and he's written articles. And I'm going to warn you, it gets deep really quick. Like the science that he writes about gets deep, and if you're not into that kind of thing, it
gets a little wordy.
It may be good to put to sleep at night. You're trying to go to sleep, read one of the articles. But if you dig that kind of thing, it's a different approach that differs than anyone else that I've seen. So anyway.
So do you have them on all your guitars?
Yeah, I do.
You do?
Yeah, it's kind of my agreement with him is that, you make it easy for me to have your pickups in my guitars. Mm-hmm. I won't have hum in my videos, and people will get to see these slanty pickups everywhere.
They definitely have a really meaty tone to them.
Yeah, these they have a whole range, ranging from, you can get like underwound voiced pickups. I have those in my Garage guitar, and it's almost too articulate because the Garage is already articulate guitar. Right. And you can get them all the way up to like steel-poled humbucker strength. Mm-hmm. And so using different materials and different winding count and that sort of thing, he can really target those different tones in there. And you can instantly recognize them because of the little slanty lines there. So, and he loves to answer questions because people tend to have a lot of questions about him. So
the honeymoon is not over.
No, the honeymoon is not over, and it's not. As far as I'm concerned, like I'm out of the market when it comes to pickups. Right. I mean, part of that's because I have such a good relationship with them. If you like their website, it's because I spent a couple of weeks working on that this year. So I have a really good relationship with them. I redone their website and give them feedback on new designs and stuff like that. So it's not because I don't think there's anything out there that sounds better. Mm-hmm. I have no idea, and I don't care.
Right.
Like that might be sacrilege in terms of like a tone chaser.
Right.
These sound so good and are so functional in terms of the hum canceling that I don't ever think, boy, I wish if I could get a better. I just don't. It never crosses my mind.
I could kind of understand that in a way because I have a bunch of Telecasters. There's no need for anything else. But.
So like the Stratocaster.
Well, I do have a Stratocaster now that I love. I do, and I also have another Stratocaster that it just is.
That you broke.
It's the one that Travis broke.
Yeah, Travis.
When he tried to throw the guitar. Mine's back. Bob can probably link that up here. So so that one is repaired and it stays shelved just because it sucks.
Sentimental.
It's pretty bad. But
the one knock that people have on the pickup is that they are expensive. I mean, they're right up there around. I forget, a set of 3 is like close to $300, like $285 or something like that. So they're up there with all the other high-end pickups. And while I don't think that price is unfair, I think that's the one thing people got to realize. Building a pickup that isn't built like a normal pickup, there's a lot less profit margin in that price than you might have if you were building traditional pickups.
Right.
Because there's more parts. It's a little bit more complicated to build. So. Like
it's expensive getting a patent too.
Yeah, exactly. So, like I'm aware of the fact that they're expensive high-end pickups, but in my mind, what I get out of them is definitely worth whatever they cost.
Cool. So there you go, Snarf.
When is a buffer absolutely necessary?
So to accurately show you what's going on with the buffer, let me explain what we have going. We have maybe 10-foot cable-ish or so.
10-footer?
Yeah, probably into a tuner, 6 inches. Are these 6-inch cables?
Yeah.
Yeah. 6-inch cable into a DB Plus with that's a prototype, but it's got a buffer. that I can turn on or off here on the side, into an overdrive, so another 6 inches, into a delay.
And they're all true bypass.
They're all true bypass, and then we're going out. I have several.
15?
I'm going into a pedal that's turned off through another 15-foot cable into another pedal that's turned off, and to another 15-foot cable into the amp.
So we might have 50 plus feet of
So
cable
we got tons of footage and low pass filtering going on.
Yeah.
So let me turn it off and let's see what we sound like.
This is our sound. Pickups seeing that whole length of cable because everything's bypassed.
Right.
Makes my ears bleed.
Okay, so
very dark.
let me turn the buffer on. Okay, and so just to make sure people don't misunderstand what buffer's doing, it's not adding anything.
No.
So let me hook like a 4-foot cable onto you. I'll have to have you maybe move over here.
That's fine. Switch spots.
So, or I can just go to the shop. All right, so what we have here, we bypassed all that stuff. Anthony is just going through a cable about this long. That's about 4 feet, 3 feet, 4 feet for the podcast listeners. And let's see what that sounds like.
So not identical, but very, very close to the sound of going through a 10-foot cable into a buffer.
Right. Yep. So, but keep in mind, you're also losing some stuff with a 10-foot cable.
Yes,
So
exactly. So
if we put that buffer right next to your output jack, that'd be a different story.
So I think what's important to learn about buffers here is that they essentially protect you from whatever length of cable comes after.
Right.
They don't. A buffer pedal does not protect you from the initial cable. So, you guys have talked before. Long runs of cable on your pickups start to attenuate both your high end and it really starts. It leaves the mid range alone, and the high end and low end start to fall off, and the result can be kind of a real neat. It's like what a tube screamer does, but not on purpose.
Yeah, kind of. So,
it thins out your tone and everything. And like I always say, we can't say whether that's good or bad.
Right.
Scientifically, it's worse.
Right.
But whether it sounds good or bad, that's up to you.
Well, it's like the coily cables actually.
Exactly.
They take a ton of that stuff out. And if you're using something like a plexi or something that's fairly bright, or even like a twin that's fairly bright, that actually can be a pretty good thing.
Yeah, you
a
can
good
work.
mod.
You can work. It's kind of like having an EQ pedal built into your cable. You can work it right at the right end. But what a buffer will do is, so let's say you're playing at a show where your amp is 40 feet away because you're on a huge stage or something like that. You're going to need a long cable to run to your board. Well, or to your amp. If you want to be able to walk from your board back to your amp, you're going to need another long cable to run to your board.
Right.
So what a buffer can do, if you have all true bypass pedals, is essentially cuts the length of cable that your pickups are seeing in half. So let's say you had a 20-foot cable to your board and a 20-foot cable to your amp.
Right.
Putting a buffer on your pedal board means that your pickups are only driving a 20-foot section of cable because the buffer is kind of isolating whatever comes after that. Now that works until you have to get really long cables connecting you to your board because the buffer pedal on your board doesn't help with that.
Right.
That's where a built-in guitar buffer helps. That's why when
you recommended.
I have the Redeemer from Creation Audio Labs.
Yep.
That comes as a belt pack, or if you don't mind drilling into your guitar, it can be installed inside with a battery pack in the back and everything. And the reason I use that is because when I shoot in my studio, I typically have to be connected with a 30-foot cable because I don't have helpers. It's just me. So if I got to go tweak something on the other side of the studio, I have to walk over there. So I'm using a 30-foot cable to my board, and then my amps are in the other room, so it's another long cable there. So I have to use a buffer on my guitar. But that basically means I could run a lamp cord between my guitar. I wouldn't even have to be a guitar cable, and you essentially wouldn't hear much of a difference. Now, if you want to hear more side-by-side examples of this, last year I actually did a series of videos that I called Cables, Buffers, and Tone, or something like that. And a mutual friend of ours, John Fiesel from DC Pedalboard, he has this great true bypass loop switcher.
The Yoke.
The Yoke 5. Yep.
Yeah.
So I got an early prototype of that thing before they were even out. And I did a series of videos first comparing cable length. The looper allowed me to instantly switch between them, so you could hear the differences very clearly.
Right.
So the first video is comparing cable length. Then the next one, I compared cable brand versus length. So I compared different brands of cable at 4 different lengths.
Cool.
And so you can hear how much the effect of good cables changes as you go from short to long.
Let's link that up in the video.
Yeah, it's texasbluesalley.com/cables, I think is the shortcut. I'll get that set up. That'll take you to the list of all the videos. And then for the last 2 videos, I focused on buffers, and I showed what effect a buffer pedal has in your signal chain with different lengths of cable before and after it. And then in the final video, I did the built-in buffer versus the buffer pedal and comparing and contrasting when those might work. But for most people who use a relatively short cable to their board, between 10 and 15 feet, a buffer pedal is probably the best solution for them, because then they can be as far away from their amps as they want.
Did you try something like a Boss pedal versus like a dedicated buffer?
No, I got the Pure Tone, I think, is a company. I forget what the name of the company is, but the buffer was called the Pure Tone buffer or something like that. Okay. And you'll see it in the videos, and it was a good buffer pedal they make. He wanted me to check it out, and so I said, well, actually, I'm doing this series of videos. I'll just use it. So it's very much like what the Decibel Plus minus the boost part of it is, just the buffer.
Just the buffer.
But I did not compare a non-bypass pedal buffer, meaning a pedal that's designed to do something other than buffer. It just happens to have a buffer.
Right.
So I used a dedicated buffer, so there may be differences in quality of buffers in some of those pedals.
I forget what episode, but there's a few episodes there. We discussed the nerdiness of NPN versus JFET bass buffers and op-amp buffers. And
nerdy.
Wake up!
But a pedal like the Decibel, that's designed to be as transparent as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's not going to color anything.
Yeah.
So
that's the short and long of what buffers mean for most people.
Well, cool. So, do you find that it changes, like a buffer? Do you feel that it changes the feel of anything, the sound?
Oh, yeah, totally. So, everything is subjective. So, with the Redeemer that I talked about, because that buffer is right next to your pickups, if you're used to playing through a 15-foot cable, even at 15 feet, you will notice a huge difference. If you're used to playing through a 15 to 20, 25-foot cable, and you stick a Redeemer, even just a belt pack there, and run through that, if you have optimized your amps to sound good through all that cable, it will sound ungodly bright. I mean, way, way brighter than what you consider usable. And so what you got to realize is that you're restoring back into your signal all of those frequencies that were being attenuated by the cable, and it means you've got to change how you EQ your amp and everything like that. That's not going to sound good for every pickup amp combination, like through a Vox amp or even through like a Marshall. You might need to compensate for the signal that's now passing through that wasn't before by lowering the presence or whatever. For me, what I do through Fender amps and with the Zexcoil pickups, it's like the perfect combination. But just be warned, go sticking a buffer in your signal panel right by the pickups. Be prepared to have to compensate for that extra onslaught of high end later.
And do you use a fuzz like on any of your personal board?
That's the one thing that I've heard is that if you buffer your pickups, it's not going to interact with a fuzz the same way as it did before.
So, yeah.
I am not nearly enough of an expert on fuzzes that I noticed a difference. So it didn't change anything that I do, but that doesn't mean that won't be the case for somebody else. Gotcha. What I like about the Redeemer buffer is that it has, if you get the belt pack, it has a little button you can disable it, so you can just turn off buffering, similar to what you can do here with the Decibel Plus. And then if you get the one that's built in, what I had my tech do is just wire one of the volume knobs as an on-off switch for the buffer. That way I could disable it in case I ever get better at using fuzz pedals.
There's a mod that we actually do to these for people that you can wear it on your belt pack.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, similar thing.
Basically what we do is we just take a patch cable, and then we take tape, electrical tape, and wrap it around the strap.
I was really hoping this wasn't a real thing.
So email Max at wamplerpedals.com.
Someone's going to be emailing you. Can I get the bill?
Can I get that decimal belt
$75 for that modification. But
Yeah.
I'll do it
Tape comes
myself.
free.
Tape comes free.
They ship the pedal with a roll of tape.
Duct tape, your choice.
So, no, seriously, we don't do that. But
Yeah, TexasBluesAlley.com/cables. And if you have the attention span to sit through them, you will leave that video series being able to hear the difference between those cables.
your brain will be
hopefully.
smoked. Won't it?
Yeah.
All right, so very cool. So we'd like to thank you so much for being on the past month, 3 weeks now, something like that, of podcasts.
I'd like to
five podcasts.
apologize to my wife for being gone for a month.
Yeah. So thanks
That's how
so
long
much.
I've been here.
Yep. So for Anthony and the other guy,
Max?
forget his name.
No respect.
He's not. Don't worry about him. He's not important. I'm Brian from Wampler Pedals, and if you have any comments, please put them in the section below. If you're watching this on YouTube, if you're watching on the Facebook, comment there as well. And
Keep on chasing that tone.
email podcast at wamplerpedals.com with any comments or questions. Thanks so much.